times,
Yeah.
But that was good. Movie night was good because they need to give people
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear.
up for sale.
Is it?
Some of the buildings.
I did not know that. I guess they're pushing everything to that spot now.
To the spot, or to Kyle, or to Shirts.
Mhm.
You been to that one in Shirts?
Depends on how
I
much
don't
we
know
get
if
for it.
she comes back.
She was
We have quorum. There's 6 sitting at the dais and there's 1 making copies. And we're going to go straight into closed session as authorized by sections 551. Oh, I didn't have anybody ask me for public forum. Okay, there's no one to speak at public forum. Going into closed session is authorized by section 551.072 and 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. So we'll move into executive session.
No,
Oh, okay.
that's just the agenda prep.
Okay, I'll send that to you.
I'm going to reconvene at 7:14. The board will reconvene in open session to take action on 2 items: consideration and possible approval of non-instructional professional contract renewals and extensions, and consideration and possible approval of superintendent's performance evaluation.
I move that we approve the non-instructional professional contract renewals and extensions as discussed in closed session.
I'll second Ms. Cantu.
We have a motion from Ms. Hanson and a second from Mr. McLaughlin that we approve the non-instructional
it was-
professional contracts.
Mr. Arredondo.
Oh, it was Mr. Arredondo? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I heard the male voice on this side.
You sound normal.
Kathy Hanson and Miguel Arredondo. All in favor? 7. None opposed. Consideration possible approval of superintendent's performance evaluation.
I move that we approve the evaluation as discussed in closed session.
I second.
I second.
Seconds everywhere. Ms. Hanson moves,
Take your pick.
and Ms. Halsey seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
7, 0 opposed. We'll move into budget workshop.
Good evening, trustees. James Barton, Assistant Superintendent for Business and Support Services. And presenting with me this evening is Ms. Stephanie Munoz, Executive Director of Human Resources. We're going to have 5 objectives this evening. Number 1 is to talk about insurance and benefits. Number 2 is to further the discussion about compression that you began at agenda prep. Number 3 is to present the salary scenarios that you requested from administration. Number 4 is to set a public hearing date for tax rate and budget. And then finally, to allow you a discussion in preparation for a decision on the compensation plans.
Good evening, everyone. So TRS met on April 16th, and the feedback that we were given was that they would be holding a meeting July 15th through 16th to make decisions for health plan rates at that meeting. So we will not know how our rates will increase or if they'll stay the same until the July meeting. However, our supplemental plans like dental, vision will remain the same with little change at all. Just our gap insurance is going to go up. There's about 60 participants, but it's not a very big change. We also want to highlight some of our plans that the district does offer that are free of charge, like EAP, which is our employee assistance plan. That does offer free counseling to our employees and their dependents, whether they're enrolled in our health insurance or not. We have 1-800-MD, which is a service that our employees can use telemedicine for themselves and dependents, and they don't have to be on our health insurance. So going into some compression examples, I know we talk about this often, but we wanted to explain what compression is. And so we have custodian pay, instructional aid pay, and child nutrition. If we look at the start of fall 2017, our starting pay was $10.60, $10.80, $10.60 for those positions. Then moving forward into the raise that was approved 18-19, you can see the raise increased by $2 for those positions. Then moving into 19-20, a $1 raise was approved, and then a 50-cent raise last year. And so at the very end, you can see what our custodians would be making. And just if we were to approve a $2 increase this year, then what the bottom number would be for a new hire in these positions. So we just wanted to provide those examples. We also looked at starting pay in the area. So San Marcos CISD's pay for these positions is listed at the top. And then we pulled pay from our surrounding school districts, because if we had someone leave the district, this is where they most likely would go, right, to our neighbor districts, along with maybe Texas State University, who's also one of the other larger employers. And so this is a big celebration for our school district. We do have a very competitive pay as far as the starting rates. And so we wanted to highlight what you all have done when we had $10.60 and now we've bumped up to $13. The next slide is salary scenarios. So based on our last meeting, what you asked for, we've put together these compensation packages. Teachers, the 1.25%. For other professionals, this includes counselors, our SLPs, our LSSPs, those type of positions are listed along with administrators. Classified is all of our hourly employees at $1.50. You'll see the additional cost and our projected deficit. Then moving to the 3% for teachers, 2% for other professionals, $1 for classified. And then the last column, 3% for teachers, 3% for professionals, and $2 for classified.
Were there any questions on the last slide? That was the meat of the presentation. Yes, ma'am.
So can you go back to the slide where we have the rate increases by year? So I think that when we talked about this, I think it was in 2018, but it might have been in 2017, we were provided a number of the hourly employees who have children who enrolled in the ISD, and I think it was between like 250 to 300 of those employees have children enrolled in the district. Could we get that number again, please? I realize that not tonight because it takes a little digging, but if we could get that before the meeting, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Mejia?
For our hourly workers, I assume that they work up to 40 hours, or is it less?
For child nutrition, they work 7 hours every day, so 35 hours a week. For custodians, it is 40 hours, and our paraprofessionals, like our instructional aides, 40 hours.
So for 35 hours per week, is that considered as part-time here, or is it considered as full-time?
Full-time.
Okay, thank you.
And bus drivers?
Bus drivers are 30 hours a week, and we do consider them full-time, so they're eligible for benefits, and they do get sick and state leave.
Thank you.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Thank you, Dr. Barton. The slide that references compression, it's my understanding or my assumption that this slide was created in response to not only, I guess, the board, some of my colleagues referencing wanting to achieve a $15 minimum wage with a $2 increase. So there's where the 15 comes from. And then if we provided that $2 increase for all classified employees, then it'd be like 610, 630, and 610 again as in the graph. So I guess my question is there like a recommendation from you all to not establish the 15 or to increase? I mean, again, and I understand that you're not like making a recommendation, I guess, but what would be a response to, well, then how do we address the concerns of compression?
No, sir, we weren't asked to make a recommendation, so we didn't prepare one for you this evening. At Agenda Prep, the discussion was about whether the $2 or the $1 or whatever the figure is that the board decides would be applied to existing employees or applied to the starting pay rate. And there was a discussion about compression at that time. And again, that meeting was by Zoom, and we just didn't want to allow any misconception or misunderstanding to exist on the board, among the board. So we just want to be clear what we were talking about when we say raising the starting pay rate. That's what it looks like, and that's the resulting compression. And we just want to make sure that we illustrated that.
And I have one follow-up. So in this, I kind of ask this question every year because I still don't really know. So if I get a quote in the newspaper, fine, whatever. On our ISD website, and I think on every ISD's website, there are scales like the low, mid, and high. Will you explain what those are, or how those are used? And like if I'm a beginning year custodian and I'm like applying for the job and it says, you know, low, mid, high, like what does that mean to me as a potential employee?
Right. So if we were to change our starting pay, then if we were to go with the $15 starting, then that means those pay grades for hourly employees would start at 15. So we would have to make adjustments to every single pay grade moving forward because they're different job skill sets, right? You don't want to pay your entry level positions the same as possibly the higher, skill set level positions. They start blending and looking like each other when their job duties are completely different. And so this does demonstrate if you have a 3-year custodian, you're going to be paying them $16.10, whereas next year if we bump it up to $15 starting, you're going to be paying someone $15 an hour. So they may perceive a 3-year custodian, I'm getting very close in pay as a new hire with 0 experience. And we use those pay scales based on service records that they bring from other school districts, or say I work at Texas State, I've worked there for 5 years, I can provide documentation saying I've been a custodian for 5 years, then we utilize that and we pay our new custodian based on 5 years of experience on our pay grade.
So, and I understand that, and I apologize if I didn't ask this question correctly. So, like on the hiring scale or schedule or whatever you want to refer to it as on the ISD website, it says like entry-level custodian position, and it's like the first column there. Mm-hmm. And in that column, reading left to right, it says like low, mid, high. So even though I might be like a first-year custodian here, if I show documentation that I've worked in this field before, then I'm eligible for that like higher range custodial level pay. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay, and if we established a $15 minimum wage by voting for the $2 increase, then that scale would just begin at 15 and would obviously be at the higher end of 16 plus if we did the low, medium, and high, correct?
Right, so we would do 15 would be starting pay, and then we'd have to adjust mid and max. For all of our pay scales, we'd have to look at all of that for clerical positions and auxiliary.
For the purposes of this conversation, I think that entry-level position right now, and I'm kind of making this up because I looked at it this weekend, I think it was like $4.10, maybe like mid entry-level custodian. So, I mean, is there any like, I guess, why is that mid number the mid number for that position? Is that like the best practice, or, I mean, obviously we're doing stuff that is different from every neighboring ISD, so like what makes the midpoint of a hiring position the midpoint? Like why is that the midpoint?
Well, we do work with TASB very closely to help us look at surrounding districts, who has enrollment like us, what their pay grades look like. and they provide us examples and recommendations. And then we utilize that to build our own pay structures because we want to be competitive with our neighbors, and also be comparison to who has student enrollment the same size as San Marcos, and what their staff population size looks like as well. So we try to do that every 2 to 3 years so that we can make adjustments to our pay scales accordingly.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, okay, if we move up starting to $15 an hour, does that same amount of increase, let's say it's $2, go to each category above that?
Each point.
Yeah, like midpoint and high?
Right, we would have to look at that, and I think really working with TASB to make sure that we adjust our pay scales correctly would need to be done, because again, we don't want our entry level to look like someone who has 15 years or max.
Well, that's why I'm saying I would only be able to approve an increase if everybody else got the same amount.
Right.
Because otherwise, you know, I feel if I'm at the top and I'm not getting whatever we approve, then why are the beginning people getting, you know, a bigger amount?
Right.
That's
It's the
my
same
concern.
process you use with the teaching scale, the teacher scale,
Right.
the compression scales. They're
and I
affected the
think-
same way.
With our, different scenarios, if you decided to do a $2 increase and start the pay at 15, that, for hourly employees, would make a little bit more sense. It would be hard just to raise $2 pay starting and not look at hourly employees.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Okay, so is this how every district does raises? Because this still seems like a really silly way to decide pay. In every job I've had, I have like a end of year review, and they evaluate my performance, and then they adjust my compensation for my performance. And what they do for my peers or colleagues in the same job could vary. They might get more had they been more effective. They might get less if they've been less effective. But as I understand it, whatever raise this board decides, and we don't know how any of them are doing, individually, the very worst, I'm going to pick on instructional aides because the last one I did was custodians, I think, but the very worst instructional aide, who the teachers give very poor reviews to, who can't help too many kids in the class without getting overwhelmed, who does not go above and beyond. If this board approves the $2 raise, they're getting a $2 raise. But my very best instructional aide, who is just really like a teacher without the certificate and carries so much weight and goes above and beyond and is so essential to the classroom and gets glowing reviews, same raise. Why can't we just approve like $1 million for classified employees and have their supervisors determine to whom more merit is worth more pay?
We can share that answer. So you're looking at a merit type of increase where you would go based on appraisals, and then a certain school would get a certain amount and they would divvy it up based on appraisals. We do the general pay increase in school districts, and kind of reflecting back to our last meeting, you can do a one-time pay, a percentage, or you can do a retention pay or nothing at all.
Well, I understand for teachers that that's kind of the way it goes, but why is that for classified employees who have job functions which mirror job functions in the rest of the world, outside of public ed? Like, why can't we do something different there to keep our better? Because what I'm thinking is, if I'm that very best, now I'm going to go back custodian because it makes more sense. I'm just I'm cleaning, 2/3 of the school. The guy with me is cleaning 1/3 of the school. I'm having to go over to his third half the time because he's messing it up. We're getting the same raise, but then another opportunity is out there for me in the private sector that pays a little bit more, where my superior skill and qualifications reward me with more pay. I'm going to leave. So by the system you have, you're only going to keep the bottom over the long haul. Your top performers are going to flee because their performance is not getting recognized.
To answer your question directly, the general pay increase is how school districts traditionally do it. There are models out there that reward people based on performance. We're being given the opportunity to explore that. The state is with the teacher incentive allotment, but that's still many years out on the teacher level. I don't believe those models exist for custodial and classified positions, but we could explore that and get back to you.
Well, maybe not me, but yeah. Okay.
But you'll watch. You're going to watch it.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. And just going back to the I guess proposed based on the salary scenarios, the $1.50, the $1 or the $2 raise, because I guess we haven't decided yet, but some of us are conversing like we have. And so all of that to say is it's my assumption that as in every other year that I've been on this board, when this board enacts a general pay increase, every classified employee is going to see that $1.50 or that $1 or that $2. So I just kind of want to say that because I know like for 2 times now over the last two budget workshops, we've had this conversation like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this unless every hourly employee sees this raise. But it's my understanding that they've always seen this raise. Whatever that dollar amount is that this board approves not only increases the minimum wage, but also every current employed ISD professional receives that.
Sir, if you would track that on the top line,
Yeah.
you can see how that custodian who started at $10.60 in 2017, 2018 has had pay increase every single year with your approvals. I think what the intention was to show that a dramatic increase like $2 would narrow that for a first-year employee and a fourth-year employee, and it would bring them closer together than maybe we recognized.
And I respect that opinion, and I agree with you. And I mean, like my first year, and this was before your time, or even before Superintendent Cardona's time, I was like bamboozled because I would approve like a 3% increase for hourly employees, which turned out to be like a quarter, right? And that's why I think we started moving to actual dollars and cents, because it was like, oh, hourly employees are getting 5%. And it was like, yeah, but that's 18 cents on the dollar, so whatever, right? But they were getting the largest percentage point, and it was like a big celebration, but when you did the math, it wasn't that celebratory. So the reason why I say that is because, I mean, there's always going to be, like, I'm assuming, and the chart doesn't show it, but the people who got the $2 raise in 18-19, they were still only making, I mean, I don't know what the minimum wage was in 18-19, right? But has it always been kind of close between?
I can't speak to that.
Like, I'm sorry, because that's like a bad example or where I was going with that. But I'm assuming like people who are always coming into the ISD are receiving the benefits of all the raises because the other employees really aren't like lapping them when it comes to pay. Or if they are, like, great. Like, I wish the custodian who was here 40 years was making like $70,000 when they left, but I don't think they are, right?
I believe
like,
historically, when you approve a raise, we award that a raise to our new employees. Again, this was just a response to the discussion that you had on the Zoom about all existing employees versus new employees. And we wanted to make sure that we demonstrate how we've historically done it and intended to do it in response to whatever decision you make this evening.
Okay. No, and I appreciate that and respect y'all's opinion. It's just I think this has historically been like an issue, right? Because we give everyone the raise, but we raise the floor with it. But, I mean, if there's a concern about compression, I'm willing to approve a $2.50 raise for current employees and still have the minimum wage at $15, but that's just me, right? So, anyway.
Right. So can you go back to the other slide, please? So I think that we started talking about $2 an hour because the starting wage, the lowest minimum wage right now is $13 an hour, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So that's not shown here, but if we take the 13 and make it into 15, then talking about the midpoint, the low and the midpoint and the high, then the lowest increase would be $2, but some people on this chart or further along on this chart would make get a more than $2 an hour increase.
So if I have a first year custodian this year making $13 an hour and we bump the starting pay up 15, we give a $2 raise, then they're gonna be making $15 an hour, and they're a second-year custodian.
But if you're talking about further along, then they would get a bigger than $2 an increase.
Right. Well.
Yeah, because
if they're-
that's the whole conversation about the low and the midpoint, and the base would be $2.
So if I'm making.
Nobody would get less than $2.
No one would get less than $2.
Right.
Everyone
one
would
would
get
get more.
$2.
But some people could get, because you have a scale already where you have a low point, a midpoint, and a high point.
That's the hiring scale.
It's the hiring scale.
Right, but
if
we've done this with adjustments before when we go back to address compression. So it's certainly possible to create a compression table so that when we do this, that $2 is the very minimum that somebody increases, and that we adjust that accordingly.
We could. We don't have that presented in our budget.
I understand we don't have that tonight, but I mean, we've made like across the board adjustments before, and then we go back and we do the compression adjustment but we could do that all at once, or we could do the $2 now and then come back in 6 months and do the compression adjustments.
Right. With teachers, I believe it was 3 years ago when we presented salaries, we had to make compression adjustments because the raises were different
Right.
each year. And so to differentiate the years, we had to make those adjustments, and we built it into our budget at that point.
And we could still do that with hourly employees.
I don't think we have that study done, and that's not something we do. Someone comes in to do it. So it was part of the TASB study that the board did 3 years ago, and they make the across-the-board adjustments to everything. I don't think we do that internally.
No, but there's certainly, I mean,
So I guess.
I think you still have pay categories, right? We don't have, like, every single employee is not making something different than every single other employee. There's still within those categories, right?
Right.
Right. And so you could look at the spread on them and see, and make a recommendation of, this seems like a fair adjustment based on bringing this level up. This would be a recommendation, and then the board can decide whether or not we can afford that. Yes?
It definitely would take some input from TASB. I hear what you're trying to say, so your first year doesn't look like your entry
Yeah.
level. But as far as how to make that adjustment, is it a quarter? Is it 50 cents? That would definitely take us some research so that we don't have as big of a compression between
Not
0
necessarily
and
though,
10.
because that's how percentages work. Like if we just did a 10% or 8% across the board on the classified, then that would be on all of their pay. So if you were making $30 an hour, the 10% raise would be $3. But if you're making $13, the 10% raise would be $1.30. We've just gotten away, because I remember I was here with Mr. Arredondo when we did the 5%, and someone told me that was a quarter or something. I was kind of irritated. So then we veered to set points because we didn't want to make the same mistake again. But those have to be blended. I think it can't always just be a number. I think that we had to do that $2 year because our bottom was so low. But now we could do a percentage, and then that would apply according to that. I would be more supportive of that because at least we're rewarding those that are doing more.
But we could make the percentage difference between 13 and 15 and take that, whatever that percentage increase is, and
But that's 15%, and that would probably be an extra, they'd have to do the math, but another $1 million.
But I would like to see that. I mean, I think we're sort of trying to sit here and make decisions blindly, talking about hypotheticals rather than looking like we can actually get the actuals for that.
True.
We can always table this and come back to it. Mr. Arredondo?
So in this, I'm ready to vote tonight. I'm confident about how I'm going to vote. I don't know about anyone else, but just to, I guess, have this conversation with my colleagues. So we look at the pay increase chart for 2020, 2021, 1410, 1430, 1410 again. The ISD is the minimum wage right now on paper, and hiring is $13. So we've had this $1.10 differential between 0 year and 2 or 3 year already, right? So I understand that we're talking about it now, and I appreciate staff for bringing this forward because it was the trustees who said we're worried about compression, but we've always had that $1.10 differential between 0-year and multi-year employees, right? And I'm assuming same thing 2019, 2020, 2018, 2019, right? I'm like, this isn't just happening this year because we're approving $2, because of minimum wage right now is 13, which is only $1.10 less than what the chart says, right? So if we plug in the minimum wage for this year, it's still $1.10, right? So we had compression this year and we all survived, right? Like, sun came up in the morning. So I'm confident, comfortable having this vote tonight. But in future years, like we did with teachers, having a TASB study on compression, and I know several years ago, Superintendent Cardona also examined the way in which we staff departments, right? And I know that showed that we were overstaffed in child nutrition. And so, again, I'm ready to vote tonight if my colleagues are, but moving forward, looking at Mr. McLaughlin's, we'll name it the McLaughlin Act or whatever, merit-based pay for hourly employees or teachers or whatever that looks like. Because as a former university employee, that's how it worked for me, right? Like, my department got a pool of money and it got divided across like the college, and if you were good, you got all of it, and if you weren't so good, you might not have gotten anything, right? And so, but for the purposes of tonight's conversation, that $1.10 differential has existed in previous years, and so although I want to address it, I don't think we have the information to do that tonight, but I look forward to future discussions when we do have that information.
In addition, this evening, we asked that you would set a public hearing date for tax rate and budget for June 21st. That way we can begin on our public notices.
And that's our regular scheduled meeting.
That is our regularly scheduled meeting. And looking at the timeline, this evening, we had hoped to evaluate the salary scenarios. The stipends will be part of whatever package we present. We're considering compensation this evening. If you choose to table it or vote, that's upcoming. And then we have an action item to set the public hearing date. We did reserve 2 additional dates, May 17 and June 7. If we need an additional budget workshop, just we'll handle that there. And then June 21st is where we'd like to hold the hearings and approve the budget.
Do you have a recommendation for the public hearing tax rate?
On the June 21st would be our recommendation.
Ms. Villalpando.
Ms. Villalpando?
Yes. I was going to ask, when is the latest that you would need on the salaries?
Right up until the 21st, technically. I mean, we've done it on the same night before. We just have different versions of the budget. And so whichever one you approve, then we present you one. But with 2 meetings before then, I would hope we're in advance of that.
Okay.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes, Mr. Elizondo.
I have a question, and then based on that answer, I have a motion as well, if we're going to go on to that item. This goes to the salary scenario slide, Dr. Barton. So the 1.25% for teachers, the 3% for teachers, those 2 projections, is that more along the lines of what Mr. McLaughlin referenced, is like, if I'm a teacher at 10 years, my salary is X, I multiply that by 3% and I get like what my raise is going to be? Or is it 3% of midpoint and every teacher gets the 1,800 and whatever raise?
You want to take that since you do it?
Correct, the second one. So we would take midpoint and we would give every step the same increase.
So on the 3%, what dollar amount is that of 3% of midpoint?
1752.
1752? Okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if it's possible, but I want to understand this.
In a budget workshop, I think we can have questions, can't we?
I'm okay with her.
It's a workshop.
I'm fine with
It's a
I mean,
workshop.
It's a,
Who is this?
Go ahead.
Okay, so you have pay grades, and it sounded like you have pay grades for hiring. Do you implement those pay grades across the entire duration of the person's employment? So, does that make sense?
So our pay grades are based on administrator pay grade, And then classified, we have auxiliary, so our bus drivers, our child nutrition custodians, and then we have our clerical pay grade. So you're hired on your pay grade depending on how raises are done by percentage. It could be percentage of midpoint that's given for all of those different positions, or a flat rate like we have here. And then every single person who gets the raise gets $1, $2, or $1.50.
And there's a top tier pay
Clint,
scale. for
I have
your-
another question.
Yes, ma'am. We have
That
a,
top, if you've been here 50 years or 10 years.
yes, minimum, mid, and then maximum.
Okay.
I have one more question. You went over the hours. I think you said the custodians were 40 hours.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
30. Oh, 40, sorry.
40 for custodians, I think. And then how many weeks a year, or I guess
Their contract?
257 for custodians,
257?
186 for IAs and child nutrition workers.
Okay.
And so if you look at a custodian who is working at $13 an hour times 8 times 257, that's like 26,728.
Okay.
If you have an IA making $13 an hour, that's 19,344. And a child nutrition is 16,926.
So you said 26,000 for the custodian?
Yes, sir.
So at $2, we would be giving the custodians, I'll just check my math here, a $3,900 raise, but we're giving the teachers less than half of that at 3%?
If you were to go up to 15 for a custodian,
Yes.
they would be making 30,840, which would be 4,112 difference.
A $4,000 raise? So that's close, 3,900. I mean, I understand that, like, it's popular on Facebook and stuff to do $15, but here it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the folks that are interacting with our kids that we're asking to get them out of the ditch they're in because of COVID academically, they're going to have to do amazing work. We're giving half the raise that we're giving the entry-level custodian at a campus, or less than half the raise. I just can't support that. I mean, I think everybody gets something, but that's extreme, and it doesn't relate to students and student performance.
Ms. Hanson?
For classified, I would prefer to do a percentage so that every person received a raise rather than just a dollar amount, because I'm concerned about those at mid and upper end really not getting the same, the same dollar amount that everybody else, that a beginning person does. It seems like the district's valuing a beginning person more than somebody who's been there for a while.
Longevity.
So that's why I would prefer a percentage, whatever we decide, I would prefer it to be a percentage amount.
Mr. Redondo?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion before we make a motion?
I have one question.
Ms. Halsey?
What would 3% for teachers at the high point be?
There's not. We did midpoint, and then it would be spread out for every single step. They'd receive 1752 at 3%.
1752 for the midpoint teachers.
It's 1752 that would be for every step of the teacher pay grade.
So if we increase it to 6%, would it double that?
It could, yes, because we would take midpoint and then do 6% of that.
And then it would just double the 1,089,000, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Well,
See that number?
that might be a new fold in this whole exercise. So, with that being said, then I'll make a motion that we approve a general pay increase for classified employees in the amount of $2 per hour, and for other professionals in the amount of 2%.
I second.
I hear a second. I hear a motion that we go $2 an hour for classified, and what was the percentage for other professionals?
2%.
2%, and a second from Ms. Mejia.
Yes.
And for purposes of conversation, since we had a motion and a second, since Trustee Halsey might potentially have some interest in something else for teachers, that's why I pulled classified and other professionals, because I'm comfortable voting for that, but if we need to discuss teachers more tonight, I'm ready to do that
So
as
say
well.
again what you,
So classified employees hourly, $2 per hour general pay increase. Other professionals, which is administrators, 2% increase. But I didn't loop teachers
see.
in there because I'm assuming there might
Okay.
be more conversation about that. So this would just be $2 general pay increase, classified hourly, 2% general pay increase for other professionals.
Okay.
And would we have a calculation what that would total?
Thank you.
1.7.
It's the 3% one?
It's
No, it's different.
It's
Oh, sorry.
the 1.496 plus 207. I think it's 1.703, but it's,
But you're not including teachers, right?
well, they weren't a part of the motion.
Right, that's what I'm saying, in your
Teachers are not
total.
in this one.
Right.
So what was the total again?
1.7 approximate, right?
You know, you can't figure out the total deficit, until you have all the figures, right? But that would be,
Until you have all three pieces.
right.
So it would be 14, and what was the other amount?
1,703,951.
And that's without the teacher pay raise.
Correct.
And when you're projecting a deficit, you're projecting it on expected revenues, expected enrollment? and-
Yes, ma'am, we're currently, these numbers are as of our April 1 staffing and projections. We have had some growth with the students returning mid-April, so I expect it's going to go up maybe six figures when we come back for our final budget. But these are the most accurate numbers we have as of right now. To answer the question, I think you're on track for, right now we're in a $300,000 surplus, bottom line. So if you're looking at 1.7, you're starting from a $1.4 million deficit, and then we'll handle teachers on top of that.
$300,000 surplus? Is that what you said?
Prior to compensation increases, yes, ma'am.
can you show that slide? Because
Do you have a slide for that?
No, ma'am. We talked about revenue at the first meeting. It hasn't changed. We've done all of our department budgets, and we're just waiting on your decision on compensation.
Further questions, Ms. Villalpando?
I'd like to see what Mr. Arredondo proposed, and I'd like to see the bottom line before I vote.
Okay, so what I proposed is the center of
No,
this
I
chart
wanna
in the
see it
middle,
on the graph.
and then the bottom
I'm gonna
right to the side. So it's there, and we've done this before, like à la carte raises, right? Like we have the amounts, we
Yes.
put them in our phones, and it adds up, and then the projected deficit just changes based on what we vote for.
So with what Mr. Arredondo proposed, though, it would be at least 2.8, because I'm not going to support anything less than 3% for the teachers. And I don't,
I was ready to vote with the 3%, but
Yeah.
if people wanted to have a conversation about giving them more, I was ready to have that, right?
so I think that's
wanna see
2.8.
all
If we did Mr. Arredondo's motion plus 3% for the teachers, it's a deficit of 2.8. Is that right?
Denise is working the numbers.
This is when I,
793,000.
It's really close to 2.8. Mr. Aiken would be
Can
proud
you
of me.
say that again?
2,793,435.
That's including the 3% for teachers.
That is 3% for teachers.
That's correct.
We're almost at 3 million.
Who are other professionals?
administrators.
administrators,
Administrators.
principals, assistant principals, yeah.
Counselors.
Counselors, librarians, everybody that isn't a teacher or an hourly, correct?
So I guess my question is, how is that third column more expensive than the 2.5 million deficit if I went down a percentage point for professionals? So my motion was $2 for classified, which is there. Other professionals actually went down a percentage point to 2%, which should then decrease that total cost. And if we carry the 3% for teachers, we're talking 2.7 over here now when you add up those numbers, but then why in that third column this option is cheaper. I'm willing to give administrators a raise if it makes this number go down, but I don't think that's how this works, right?
I just think it's wrong.
Not if you're giving the same raise to the administrators that you're giving to the teachers.
That one should be 2.9, right? 1.1 plus 3 is 1.4 plus 1.5 is 2.9. Yeah, it's correct there, 289. I don't know why the...
Well, the deficit.
Oh, and then he took the 300 off that we had a surplus.
Ms. Garcia is tasked with wherever you pick on the à la carte for coming up with the calculations.
But is my question, that makes sense, right? Like, why is
It's just...
Okay,
the
so
deficit bigger if we go with my option, even though that third column would theoretically be more expensive?
I'm concerned about.
Because it's 3%
dollar
for
amount.
administrators, not 2%.
Classified, because people can have more years.
2,000,008.
Because we weren't
Getting
taking the 300 back
claim.
off.
I think we need to table this to the next meeting
Thank you.
because I
Agreed.
think I want to know about the number of students that attend SMCISD whose parents are making less than $15 an hour that we're paying. I think we have a new at-large trustee who's joining the board, and I would like that person to have some ownership over this decision. No offense to Mr. McLaughlin. And I also, I don't like separating teachers and admin, especially when it's a difference of 100,000 here. I think we've done it in the past where we've tried to be consistent with that percentage, and I would prefer that we continue that. And I also want to see it in the larger context of the broader budget and the deficit, because, you know, what we talked about before, we saw that we had more money than I thought that we were going to, and so now the deficit is coming in higher than I thought it might. So I'd like to just, and with the new trustee coming in, I think we need to see the whole thing.
We have a motion on the floor.
Well, for purposes of
I'll
conversation, since no, because we're still on my
We're
motion.
having discussion on a motion and a second that took place already.
Yeah,
So,
not another motion that's being
no, we're
made.
not making a motion right now.
So,
So either we move forward with the motion and take a vote, or we rescind the motion.
well, then I'll modify my original motion to reflect the third option, which is 3% for teachers, 3% for other professionals, and then the $2 general pay increase for classified employees, which reflects additional cost of $2,898,626, and then the projected deficit as, I guess, provided by the administration.
Then I can go with the vote.
I'm sorry?
Then I can go ahead with the vote.
You're willing to
Did-
move forward?
Your
How
second might
about
need to
Mr.
second.
Yeah.
If it's gonna stay in the way it is presented, and then I'll go with,
So,
You're talking third column.
yes,
You're talking third column.
yes, ma'am.
yes.
Are you okay to vote on the third column? Ms. Mejia,
second.
were you gonna say something?
I was, but he made a motion and.
No,
but-
we have the motion and we're having discussion.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like everyone is kind of, wanting to vote, and I feel comfortable with that. so.
You're okay voting?
Yeah.
Ms. Hanson, did you
I
have a
still
comment?
have concerns about the classified. I'd rather it be a percentage than a dollar amount, because people who've been here longer, who've worked for us, won't be seeing that same amount.
I'm
So
with
that
you.
concerns
I'm
me.
against it, but he has a motion. If he gets a second, I have enough information to vote.
I mean, I'll second.
It's already
Oh,
been
We've already
seconded.
got a motion, we've got a second, we've had discussion. I want to know if we're ready for the vote. Are we ready for the vote? All in favor of going down the line on that 3%, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed? 2. And do you need a motion on the June 21st?
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we have our public hearing on the tax rate and budget for 21-22 school year on June 21st, 2021.
I'll second that. All in favor? 7, opposed 0. I've entertained a motion for adjournment.
I moved that we adjourn.
That's agenda prep.
Oh, we have to do agenda prep.
Oh, I forgot. Okay,
ready to go.
we can now, I'm just gonna need like a 3-minute break before we go into agenda prep,
I was ready to go.
if y'all don't mind.
That's fine.
Yes, we mind.
Do you mind? I'm sorry, I didn't get to go when everybody
I'm
else
sorry?
did.
Yeah, I knew that was optimistic.
Madam President, can I take this on?
My permission as someone within
Okay,
6 feet on
good.
fine.
Madam President, members of the board, good evening. For agenda prep, I'll skip down to item 3. We'll start with, after call to meeting to order and the pledges, we'll have a file statement of officer by each individual election on May 1st, 2021 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 4, administer oath of office to each individual elected on May 1st, 2021 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 5, issue certificate of election to each candidate elected on May 1st, 2021 to serve on the Board of Trustees. Item 6, public forum. Item 7, superintendent's report. We'll have some recognitions of students and staff and others. Items 8, closed session as authorized by sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. A, level 3 grievance of Jessica Favela. B, confer with attorney regarding central contract.
We add superintendent's contract?
Yes.
Superintendent's contract.
Both in the closed and the open. Have there been developments with regard to this intro contract, Mr. Superintendent?
They've made a proposal that is, it makes sense with the direction that the board gave, and so the attorney has turned that into an MOU that we believe is worth considering.
You're saying our attorney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Item 9, the board will reconvene in open session to take action if necessary on items discussed in closed session. A, level 3 grievance of Jessica Favela. Item B, possible action regarding central contract. Item C, I guess possible action regarding superintendent contract.
Yes.
Item 10, reports and information items. A, federal programs. Mr. Doyle will give a presentation on current federal programs.
At this point, we have to make the board aware that we are applying for the ESSER grant. This one's a little bit different than the last one, different requirements. It won't be a full presentation on what our ESSER 3, I know some of you have seen the news, what that'll look like. I've emailed you twice about that and keeping you up to date, but we have to get stakeholder input in the plan. And definitely, I asked for your input on some of those people we can go to today. But this we need to bring to your attention that we're applying for that grant.
Okay.
Item B, construction update. Mr. Sandoval will present a construction update as indicated. Item 11, approval of consent agenda items. Item A, 11A, approval of minutes for the regular scheduled board meeting on April 19th, 2021, May 3rd, 2021, and May 11th, 2021. Item 12.
Mr. Superintendent, right there. When did we shift to having? Are you having a standalone canvas on the 11th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Instead of just rolling it in.
Because of the time period is too long
Like an
after the
election
election.
Oh.
8 days.
Yeah.
All right.
Weird. It's weird.
Okay. Sorry.
Item 12, items for action. 12A, consider approval of SHAC committee members. Item 12B, consider action regarding architect RFQ.
That comes from the subcommittee on central office, so that we didn't blend it with bond, where our architect was chosen for expertise in schools. We went back out for an architect with expertise in central office. The ranking committee has submitted all their evaluations, and Mr. Sandoval will present us with the person that was ranked highest by the committee.
Item 12C, consider resolution of San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District Board of Trustees authorizing a one-time COVID-19 vaccination incentive stipend for all district employees who are vaccinated against COVID-19. This was brought over from last month. Item 12D, consider approval of contract between STAR Autism Support and San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and authorize the superintendent of his designee to execute contract.
Anytime we have a contract with an expenditure that goes over $50,000, the board policy says we have to bring that contract to you for approval. We're about to make, or we intend to make an additional payment that would push it over 50. So we want to bring it to you. Honestly, this is a little bit late in the game. This is Mr. Sandoval, who is helping us with getting our policies in alignment and our practice. And so we're going to do it right this year. We're going to bring it to you for approval. D&E will bring it up ourselves.
Back to C, can we get an estimated amount total?
She said, could we get an estimated amount total?
On 12C.
Right.
Item 12E, consider approval of contract between Trinity Educational Services and San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, and authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute the contract. Again.
Exact same thing. Those are both contracts that look to be going over $50,000 in the aggregate, since we're bringing them to.
Item 12F, consider approval of budget amendments.
We don't have any, but we will probably have one if the trustees give us an indication tonight about what the amount might be for the incentive. Then we would calculate that and have that ready. If for some reason it doesn't work out that way, we will move it to the next one.
Item 13, review literature.
Oh,
I-
Ms. Mejia?
Yes. I actually have a question. Can we make sure that Mr. Wozniak provides us with an update regarding the vaccine clinics for our students during the summer? Then I think that's it.
Anybody else? Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, I have several items. First, when we are approving the SHAC committee members, can we make sure that we have adequate information in the board book in order to review those committee members, including the information on the appointment process and then on each recommended person's qualifications, please? And then in reports and information, I would like to get an update on the development of the prevention and response plan for mental health, including information on what we might be doing this summer. And I'd also like that to include information on the specific social and emotional learning curriculum that we are using, and if that will continue through the summer and how. I also would like to have a closed session item on how the grievance process works in the district. And I thought we were going to be getting the full equity audit presentation at this meeting. Is that not happening?
I was just about to bring that up because I had that same question. When he spoke on Zoom, he said he would have a full report and it would be a written report.
Well, I thought we were going to have him come back, and if he's coming back, I would also like to, if it's not going to be within this meeting, or even if it is within this meeting, it was requested that we have a public forum attendant also, which I think would be a great idea, so that people who are watching either in person or online could ideally send in an email question or text a question to Mr. Fernandez if he would facilitate such. And so then the person Mr. Benson, Dr. Benson could address the concerns that people have raised in the community, and we can be as transparent as possible.
So make it an interactive presentation with community input.
I think that would be ideal, but I don't know if we're not ready to do that in May. That's
And maybe for June.
one thing, but I just,
He was disaggregating the data and
For May 17th, Dr. Reese-Mills.
we'll call him tomorrow and get confirmation.
thank you.
Mr. Redondo.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu.
And-
So I understand that the Texas Education Agency has, finally released the billions of dollars that they've been sitting on since the pandemic started forever ago. If there was any way, I understand we received the email from Dr. Barton that the administration and cabinet is developing how those funds are going to be spent and the programmatic expenditures that are going to be made to do that. I guess for me, just because like June, we're already into the summer, right? So I'm just curious about what that proposed plan is. Obviously, there's a lot of students who need supplemental support. And so whatever blessing you need from this board to say, like, I want individually, I want like 100% of the kids who need the support to get it as soon as possible. And so I just want to like hear your plan and make sure that like the in between those two things is that if we have the money, great. If not, I'm willing to spend local dollars until we get that money, that sort of conversation. So whatever that might be.
That's honestly not the issue right now. The requirement in the grant that we seek stakeholder voice in developing the plan. It's not a rubber stamp, or it's not something that we push out from the administration and just dictate what it is. Those surveys are being created today. But I emailed you, we had to send it to community groups, and I asked you who in the community may we not be thinking of that you think we need to have their voice in the process. Those go to parents, those that you want for students even. There's just several different groups. We're pushing all that out, we'll bring it back in, and that will shape what's next.
Right, so President Cantu, in response to that, but in the meantime, as I understand, there's a process now for kids recommended for summer intervention, where they're recommended by their classroom teacher or someone on campus, and those are reviewed, and you're presently denying at least some of those, right? And so, because you don't have a plan or you don't have the money. So I think the idea was from Mr. Arredondo that if the board has to bridge that gap, that would be useful. So maybe in reports and information, it seems like you could talk about how you're doing that right now.
There's unrelated issues, and I can't speak to that one, but it has nothing to do with CARES. Yeah, absolutely.
And with the summer school situation, right now, we were looking at 15% or lower. We do want to increase it. We're also looking at developing the strays, developing the enrichment programs, right? Because we want to take those out into the community as well. Right now, the concern is if we start increasing, having the personnel to facilitate those classes, because we don't have a high percentage right now of teachers that are able to work in the summer, but we are going to push these programs out. We're going to go out into the community. We're looking at TLA assisting with those enrichment programs, and then the 15% at the elementary level, we're going to start bringing them in. We've got a plan for the middle school, doing a blended model, and I know with the high school, Ms. Presley and her team developed a, I don't want to say first come, first serve, but they're working with their students. That's what we've seen. We can go, it's okay, we can go ahead and we can extend that offering and then bring you a total amount of what that's going to cost if you would like to see it.
Maybe in,
All our programs are fully funded.
but if you had 79% of the kids at Hernandez not make a year of progress, and you bring 15% in for the summer, you're missing 64%, right? But you're saying that no matter what, money not being the issue, you just don't have staff.
As of right now, it's our summer school principals are interviewing people and bringing them on board. It's just trying to get adequate amount of staff to facilitate it.
Ms. Mejia, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Ms. Cantu. So I'm going to go back to the vaccine clinics for students. I know that the high school had a vaccine clinic last week. Can Mr. Wozniak provide us with numbers as to how many students were vaccinated?
We had 100,
Okay.
not as many as we had thought,
Okay.
but they're going to continue.
Okay, perfect. Well, I would like a status as to, what are the plans for summer? And then also, back to Ms. Halsey's HR grievance filing, I would like to add if we can have a discussion about how we can improve just communication about HR processes. So possibly like implementing a HR newsletter monthly that goes out like on the 1st of every single month or so. And then that's it.
Yes, I would like for y'all to review any denials for summer school, especially for students who are in special needs, whether they're in special education or Section 504 plans. I think those kids may be overlooked and need to be included, even if they are achieving, but we know they're probably not achieving where they should be.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. And I'm going back to my comment about summer school, summer enrichment. I've seen on the HR's website, like, I think the most ever summer school position postings I've seen in a very long time. So it's obvious that a plan is being developed by the administration, if not already being rolled out. And so, referencing what Mr. McLaughlin said, coming back to my original comment, I just want to make it abundantly clear, and again, like May's the last time I get to talk to you, right before like the kids are out the door, is whatever support individually, I want to have that conversation now. If it's incentivizing summer school teachers even more to come back, if it's allocating different funds to bring in graduate students from Texas State, whatever that is, like on the heels of the pandemic and vaccinations and us kind of going back to a sense of normal operations, like this is the first opportunity we're going to get with these children, right, to start doing some type of supplemental support. So I want to make sure that you all have all the resources imaginable that you can have so that we're hitting the ground running, if you will, with these children, right? So I understand that y'all are developing two separate responses, the ESSR response, which has a timeline that it has to follow, but also the current summer school response and supplemental instruction and enrichment, and that's great. Anecdotally, I've heard that some folks who've been recommended for the program in the summer have been denied, and I don't know what that situation is. But again, if that's the case and it's like a funding or a space thing, which if it's a space thing, then that just sounds like funding, right? If we need more room, more schools open. So again, to bemoan it just one more time, I would really like to have that conversation in May with the opportunity for the board to provide direction, because the last thing I want to hear from any parent in the ISD come June or July is, I wanted my kid back in the school, I wanted them participating in this enrichment program, and the ISD said no, because that's not going to be a fun conversation up here the next time after I hear that conversation with the parent, right? So I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
We can
Yeah.
look at Chief Sykes, that was part of the original
Okay.
discussion, but when we open up by things like that, another administrator, that's fine too.
Mhm.
But then also making certain that we have the personnel, but yes, we can do that, and then also continue with the plan of going out into the community, thinking about using the same sites where we provided meals last summer,
Mhm.
and doing work there and bringing the laptops in, and students will have their laptops, so.
Wonderful.
We can add that to the plan, and I'll be more than happy to share the template. I think for that May 17th date, it would probably be wise to bring in our summer school administrator and have them speak to how they're doing it, our emerging leaders, and
Mhm.
do some really great things celebrating.
And obviously with a second site, second administrator, et cetera, I'm assuming there might be associated budget amendments, and that's why I'm saying this over and over again, because again, it's like the last time we get to do it before summer school theoretically starts, right? So, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Halsey?
Yeah, I echo what they all say, but I also, I love the idea of coordinating with the lunch sites and, and not just in terms of like having the devices there, but like, I would love to see it being, play-based for younger students and really hands-on and engaging, right? Which I'm sure that in the innovation stuff, we all do that. But could we also maybe reach out to the city and see if they're doing the summer fun camp? Is there a way that we can also be there? I want every parent in the district that wants their kid engaged in some sort of educational activity, whether it needs to be credit recovery or it needs to just be, needs 4-year-olds playing Duck Duck Goose and whatever. Like, I want them to have that opportunity through the district if we can at all.
They've reached out to us at the Reservation Park facility. Summer fun will occur, the scale is up to the city.
No, I want us to be in part of summer fun. Can we like provide tutoring in summer fun, or can we provide some educational component during summer fun that's fun, but that also, that helps summer fun provide some more educational content, and any other out of the box stuff like that we can find ways to be like at the library, wherever. The more that the district is out and about this summer, I think. And if that means, hiring, if the teachers are totally burnt out, which I get, let's pay Texas State students in the education department $20 an hour. Let's give kids and families the boost that they really need.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion to
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Hanson moves that we adjourn. Was that a second from?
John seconds.
I did, yeah.
A second
He's
from
on
Mr.
it, yeah.
McLaughlin.
Should have let him
All in favor?
It's okay. I made plenty.
7 opposed, 0.
All right, man.